gentlemen, you've heard what the mayor has said. And like I did indicate that for me, if I had the experience, when he says problem, I see opportunities. But you guys know it better than I do. So sitting where you are sitting within the Bulawayo Business Forum, what would be your response to some of the issues that David quoted has flagged?
Our first order of business as the Bulawayo Business Forum is to be able to articulate the Bulawayo story properly, and also to be very intentional in terms of who is told that story. So as part of our platform, we also have ZIDA as part of that platform. And that's very strategic from a Bulawayo commercial interest point of view, because they are the window into enterprise and economic opportunity in Zimbabwe. So we are saying, as opposed to being a back burner conversation, we also want to be in the front seat. And whatever potential investor is interested in Zimbabwe should have a view of the best that Bulawayo is to offer. So we are now looking at helping the city in terms of crafting a prospectus that talks about the best that Bulawayo has to offer. There are solid and sound, very compelling economies of location that come in the city. Hence the reason why, up to about 1935, Bulawayo was actually top in terms of GDP. It was actually greater than Harare. And why was that? It was able to leverage the economies of location, being that hub and feeding into the region. What is it that we can ride on which is happening in the country at the moment? Number one, if you look at the minerals that are endowing Bulawayo at the moment, you'd find that there's lithium that's currently happening in the southern side of the country. Then there's also platinum that's also happening around us. There's also another deposit of lithium, which has recently been found in Rwanda. And also within our hinterlands, there's a very compelling gold story that's also happening there. So let them find a way to then ride on the intent by the president when he said we need to be able to beneficiate. What is the history of Bulawayo? It's got sound engineering infrastructure. I think there are about 35 factories within Bulawayo that have rail sidings. So how can we then build on that? And I want to take a page from Indonesia. In fact, Indonesia has a lot of similarities with Zimbabwe. On the 17th of August, they are looking at commissioning a new capital city. But more importantly, in 2009, they issued out a directive to beneficiate. Hence the reason why you find from 2009 up until it took effect in 2014, they are now the keynote country insofar as nickel beneficiation is concerned. And they've been able to build multiplier industries around that. And not only that, you'll find that the companies that made it happen in Indonesia, one of them is actually here now in Zimbabwe. To what extent do we then comport all of these conversations and build one story around us, commercializing Bulawayo as a city? I also want to talk about one other thing. What is the secret sauce to Bulawayo? The secret sauce to Bulawayo is that if you look at all the cities, I think Bulawayo is a very sound claim as one of the best run cities in the country. As a banker, I look at that as creditworthiness. There's equity in that. So to then also lean on what the mayor was saying, to say, look, we need 14 million. Then we then start exercising our minds to say, how do we then commercialize? How do we then build a financial case around that credibility? There are issues of municipal bonds. Any city that's standing today is not able to build anything solid if it doesn't have access to patient capital. And when you look at the financial markets in Zimbabwe, I think they've evolved over the last 12 to 24 months. The pension funds have been able to build up a modicum of capital. We've actually seen them starting to participate in some of the infrastructural projects in the country. So we're simply now saying, look, to what extent as a city can we also then look at leveraging our money? Let's look at partnering to be able to also mobilize some of that medium-term capital to be able to solve some of these problems that are behind us. And that is our core.
My heart is jumping in excitement as you're talking, and you've actually taken me to, I don't know if you remember, David, there was a time when Bulawayo bonds were sought after in the capital markets. If you had a Bulawayo bond, they were usually oversubscribed. So you've talked about a couple of things that excite me. You've mentioned the prospectus. I mean, you're now talking business, which is why that men must be allowed to run the entire 5 10s, because some people might not come and like that. So that prospectus like a company that's going to be listed. What's the story to be told? Interesting. You've talked about the secret sauce. I like that. That's in terms of how we market the city. I love that. But I'm going to park that for a moment. You are an operator in this secret sauce. You're seeing it all happening. What is it that in the secret sauce makes your enterprise exciting? What makes the enterprise challenging?
Yeah, I think that like all industry in Bulawayo, the environment is particularly challenging, and the greater macroeconomic issues that are set in Harare, unfortunately, have a profound impact on Bulawayo, and that leads to our industry not being competitive in the region. And I think those are areas that could very easily be addressed by government. In the near future, we should be joining the Africa Free Trade Zone. We are not ready for that. Our cost of production is too high, our skill levels are too low, so it's a huge challenge. But again, it can be addressed by the appropriate policy coming out from government. There is one aspect that we haven't touched on in the debate so far, and that is the human capital in Bulawayo. And we lose a lot of our children, our young professionals, because the opportunities are not here. So to use a phrase that the Mayor used earlier, we need to reimagine Bulawayo's industry. We are not going to go back to the heavy industry and manufacturing that we had. There are new industries. It's a world that I'm not equipped to understand, but the younger generation are. And we need to create that environment to retain those skills and to grow us into the new and modern economy that I think lies ahead of us.
As we sit here, what's working for Lawrence?
At the moment, our distribution is positive. We've been able to realign our input costs, but they remain high. And in particular, electrical cost is very high. But fortunately, we are well served by ZESA, so we don't have that as a hurdle to cross at this time.
I drove in one of your cars yesterday. Thank you so much for the service. But I suspect that your cars are in the garages because of the potholes that I saw. I mean, suburbs in Kumalo, the place where the rich and famous live, the potholes are unbelievable. But that's not your responsibility anyway. How is it like doing business in Bulawayo?
Thank you. Doing business in Bulawayo, it's encouraging. Every city has its own stories, but I'm happy that the city of Bulawayo is working on the roads. There have been roads being worked on in the city center, and I'm sure if all of us do have a social contract and support the men behind the wheel, Bulawayo is going to be great again. Yes.
What is it that you're looking forward to the city and the mayor working on to ensure that your business, flourishes?
Okay. First and foremost, the road network. For example, it's been challenging for visitors to come to Bulawayo by road to pass through to Vic Falls. The road is not yet good. So basically it's mainly to do with the road network. Yes.
Well, what excites you about Bulawayo right now? What's working for you?
Currently, I'm happy that we are over with the election mode. We are not expecting any recourse, so the people are working properly.
I hope somebody's listening. We're not expecting any recalls. We're not expecting any recalls. Let me come to you now in terms of the space that you are in. What's working? I think I'm interested in that. What's working and what are the challenges?
Thanks, Trevor. Firstly, I think I'd like to echo what the Mayor has pointed out. We have good people. I think that is one of the things that makes Bulawayo quite unique. We have a willing, capable, and keen population who want to have gainful employment. It is exemplified by seeing them running around on the streets, bending and doing things to survive. That's got to change. I think the Mayor's point about law and order is important. It's unfair on existing businesses to not have people who don't have to pay rates taking over their frontages. But those people want to work. And the point about the people in the council, the technocrats, the people trying to do their job, they're all wanting to work, and I think they're all extremely capable of doing it. So our human resource base is excellent. The railway headquarter hub here has got a training centre where everybody shows up for work and collects their salary to train people, but there are no trainees. We're the centre of the rail hub network that also will stretch across to Namibia as well as its existing links. And repositioning Bulawayo with that and reimagining the railways. I'm afraid from my interactions with railways over a project a few years back, we realised that the vision for the railways is sadly lacking. We're messing around with 2 million tonnes a year of freight. We used to do 28, maybe 24 million tonnes a year of freight. We had fast trains that used to go through all the sidings from Wangi with coal. They'd take it straight through to Zisco, and they would do a 24-hour turnaround in the well-designed loops that were there for dispatching and unloading their cargo. Just as a comparison, the iron ore shipments alone in Western Australia come to 300 million tonnes a year. And we are getting excited when we go from 2 million to 3 million tonnes. So it's vision, it's imagination, and the kind of people who established Bulawayo had a vision. Those visions are being kind of trodden on a little bit. And I think we've got to attract back those kind of minds. You've already touched on I think it leads to appealing to the diaspora. We've got some of our greatest talents we've exported. And I think that human capital that we're exporting, we need to attract back here. But they're not going to come back here if they're going to earn $47 a month. We have to raise the prosperity of Bulawayo.
He's already, Harry, he's talked about, is this working? Yeah. Harry, he's talked about the bit that you did touch on, which is the prospectus. And he says the people that built Bulawayo had a plan. I hear what you're talking about is that plan, isn't it? Because plans change. You innovate, you pivot as the season goes. Talk to me about the readiness of that plan. Are you just foundational space? Who is buying into what you're trying to do in terms of what I'm really excited about, that prospectus, putting that prospectus outside?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Trevor. I think we're finding a lot of goodwill in that. If you look at the diversity of business people that have raised their hands to be part of this initiative, you'd find that there are lawyers, there are industrialists, there are bankers there. So it's quite a multiplicity of talent. In terms of readiness, I think it starts with the intent and the imagination, that notion to believe that this is possible. That's where it starts. But I also want to extend the conversation a bit further, because we're not only about the short term that I've talked about. We also want to extend our conversation to try and see that which is working for fellow countries within the region. I think if you look at South Africa, for example, they've got a very well-developed system. It's a good thing that our government had the foresight and also the fortitude to then exemplify and execute devolution.
Yeah.
But I want to think that they planted the seeds. It can actually be developed into a bigger story. Let me take you to South Africa. If you look at South Africa, they've got their parliament in Cape Town, then they've got the executive in Pretoria. So in Pretoria, that's where you also then find the embassies. And if an embassy is spending $1 million per annum, in Zimbabwe there's about 53 consulates, so that's about $53 million worth of an injection into that particular city. Then if you go to Johannesburg, that's the financial capital. Then if you go to Bloemfontein, that is the judiciary there. The government is the biggest spender in any economy. To the extent that we don't have a modicum of that spend coming into the city, I think Bulawayo is always going to be struggling.
Yeah.
So the question is now, to what extent do we then engage? I'm happy that there's a willingness to engage, which is a positive. To what extent can we then seek to unlock these lessons and also try and relieve Harare? I think the very fact that Harare is now looking at setting up, a surrogate city next to it is a tacit admission that it's oversubscribed. It's now gone past. It's now, in fact, in diminishing returns territory. So to what extent can we then reimagine and reconfigure ourselves so that we also have a share of the pie? That way now, you don't find a scenario where industries end up leaving. I think the city of Bulawayo, literally, it was like a dagger to our chests when one of the keynote behemoths in our country ended up relocating to Harare. That was painful for Bulawayo. But let's drill down to say, why is that? They want to be closer to the regulator. To what extent can then decisions be made to say this is a national gate? Can we not then reposition it so that we don't grow the country from one nucleus? We have multiple, and also then gain from the multiply effect of having multiple cities marshalling up. Imagine the effect on our GDP as a country. So those are conversations that are nascent and that we're also going to be workshopping with a view to influence.
Lovely conversations. Can someone give David a mic? Because we want David. No, but I want you to come back to Logos. The Logos story. I love the Logos story because the Logos story is a Bulawayo story. What does the future look like for you, going forward? And what I mean, I know you talked about water and so forth, but and we eat bread every day and biscuits and all the kind of stuff. But what in terms of the plans that is being talked about, what excites you? What would be your response to what Harry is talking about? What would make Logos different?
So the company has been operating in Bulawayo for nearly 80 years, and it is the recognized brand of biscuit in the country. But there has been a marked increase in competition of late, particularly in Harare, with other manufacturers coming into that space, and competition is good. There's no problem with that. What we need to look for is a level playing field and equal opportunity, and that's the area that we will be competing in. We see the opportunity to refocus our brand, to regrow the turnover. I think we've allowed ourselves to slip back slightly in the market as the competitors have come in, but the quality of our product and its availability are the targets that we'll be focusing on in the next short period.
Fantastic. David, do you want to respond to anything, add to anything that the panelists have said? And as David does that, if you've got questions, please, if you raise your hand so that we get a mic to you. This is a time for us to interact with you as members of the audience. David, any responses?
I think the main thing is to just emphasize the issue of human capital, particularly in the diaspora. One of the things that has really struck me in the last year is the intense passion that people from the city have, no matter where they are. For example, coming back to Glassblock Dam, I've been contacted by two Zimbabweans who are now in the United States in banking, and they are now working vigorously to help us raise the capital internationally for the construction of Glassblock Dam. And my belief is that there is that passion right across the board in many different disciplines. For example, in South Africa, there are many high-ranking Zimbabweans in South Africa who've achieved the pinnacle of their careers. People like Peter Ncube, CEO of Old Mutual, who retain a great passion for this country. And so we've got to try to work out how we can integrate them in the stabilization and the growth of the city.
Fantastic. Let me get back to you. Within your space, what ideally we want to see happen? You did tear up a couple of spaces, things for other issues. What would you want to see happening within the space that you are within the Bulawayo region?
Well, I've touched on railways. I think it's a key element. And actually, one of the things that railways sits on, they're sitting on some incredible property and other assets. But they are sitting on them, like sitting on a big bottom. And I would say it could almost be the task of Bulawayo to try and engage with railways and re-envision them. Just as a little example, near our factory, we've got the Railton yards there. A whole lot of houses were demolished many years ago for Westgate to make development happen. It's just a mealie field at the moment, and it's also a mealie field which blocks the sewage flows because people, when they need extra flow, they block the drains to get water for their needs. That kind of land should be put under Bulawayo's master plan and developed industrially or for other purposes. Railways also has a lot of spurs, sidings and space taken up by redundant rail lines. A redesign of the railway system could result in releasing a lot of high value CBD property for development in the city and compensating railways more than enough to relocate aspects of the rail service. So that's one. If I could just touch on a soft issue, Trevor, one of the thoughts that comes to mind is a bird cannot fly on one wing. And Zimbabwe's been flying on one wing and going around in circles for some time. Bulawayo and Matabeleland development helps the whole country. We're not trying to hive off and compete with other parts of the country. We're a body together. So that concept of flying on two wings, I think, is quite an important one to try and unlock some of the potential that we need to support us here. One of the frustrations that this wing has been suffering from is its inability to be that blue chip investor that it used to be. The bonds that Bulawayo floated to build each and every one of its dams was always holding a good coupon rate. It was always redeemed properly, but we always had prescribed asset status, which is a critical element. Bulawayo needs to have prescribed asset status to enable it to raise capital independently and as it requires.
Wow. Is my mic I think, David, I know you're earning $47. You're not going to get away with that one, eh? This is a beautiful story that I'm hearing here. The passion that's coming from the people here, the love, the long-term thinking that's around here says to me that if we're serious about nation building and we have more of these conversations that realize how important this part of the city is, that it's part of the nation, and to use your example of, if you want to fly, it's going to be more than one wing, isn't it? So, shall we open it to members of the public? Any questions, any comments? Yes, sir. Behind you, Rob, if you could move the mayor's mic to... Yeah. Thank you, sir. Just say who you are and then ask the question.
All right. Thanks, Trevor, for presenting this opportunity to us. I like the atmosphere, right? It's good today we are...
Your name, sir, if you don't mind?
Oh, my name is Regis Sivana. Okay. Yes, I'm a businessman in Bulawayo. Thank you once again for presenting us with this special opportunity whereby we interact face to face with our leaders, civic leaders, right? I like the way how Harry put it, the story issue. Yes, we need to know who is telling the story of Bulawayo, and also who is listening to that story, right? And also, we should understand that as city of Bulawayo, you are part of government. You are a local authority, so that means you're part of the government, right? In order for you to work well with the people that you are leading and with the government, we need to create synergies. Once we create synergies, it's going to translate to a vision that will be shared by all of us in Bulawayo here. So what I'm saying in essence is, we've got some problems which are very, very important, but they're not urgent. And we've got some problems that are urgent. Like now, we need to address the issue of water. It's very, very pertinent that we drive all our effort to the issue of water. Yes, we can talk about the road infrastructure, we can talk about rule of law, but at the moment, let's direct our energy to the issue of water. We can only achieve that if we work together, we have the meeting of mind as Bulawayo. And also, Trevor, I think we're not having a talk show here. We are having an interview which is going to be followed up. An interview which is going to be a resolution based. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Thank you. We really appreciate that, and we're hoping that we're going to be in touch with people like Harry. How do we get the momentum going? The town clerk, I already had a conversation with the town clerk. What can we do to ensure that the momentum that we get out of here is not lost? This mustn't be a one-off event. How do we keep the momentum going for those people that love the city? Another question? Yes, ma'am? If you could just identify yourself and then ask a question.
Good morning, can you hear me? Yes. Yeah, okay. My name is Molly Moyo. I'm the Chief Executive for Connect Water, and I'm also the Chairperson of the beautiful Bulawayo Trust. I don't have a question as such. Well, the first question actually is about the consortium that you spoke of, that is working with the city of Bulawayo, that is working towards the short-term and medium-term and long-term engineering solutions for the water. Connect Water is already working with government. We have a contract on an emergency intervention through the government. I'm in Bulawayo CPL. My company is based in Harare, but my headquarters are going to be in Bulawayo. And what I needed to know from you is that, is there a way where we can actually collaborate? Because I'm already declared as an emergency operator. So I was saying it's possible that this declaration of emergency can be done through these type of synergies, as Regis has just spoken, that we need to get to everybody who's on board, so that if it's possible, we can have a sit down and we try and find a way through the emergency declaration that's already there for the war country. This contract I have is for the war country. So I was saying, if it's possible, we can sit down and have that. And then on top of that, I'm glad that Mr. Harry has given you at least the vision of what us in the business forums are trying to do. You know, countries like America were built by business people. People like Carnegie, Rockefellers, they are the ones who built those countries. So for us to sit down here and say, we are waiting for the government to come and build Bulawayo for us, that's not going to happen. What is going to happen is Bulawayo people are going to sit down and we are going to identify so and so, and then also the attraction of those diaspora business people who are supposed to help us. It's us business people here in Bulawayo who are supposed to attract them. So what I would advise us to do is that we sit down and have monthly interactions like this, where we then identify who's in the best position to attract those people who are outside and also to intervene between Bulawayo and government, because there is people here, like myself, who is able to come in between and convey some of the messages that Bulawayo has. Devolution has that, what I'm explaining to you is what devolution is. If you want to be Cape Town, the people who are going to make us Cape Town are here, sitting in this room, not in Harare. So let's get to know each other through these interactions. If they can happen twice a month, and we get as many people to come in, and then we can then move forward. Thank you very much.
Fantastic.
In particular to the lady who's just spoken, to say that you may be aware that we've recently done a survey in business in conjunction with a South African-based foundation, and it came up with a whole range of proposals to facilitate the connection between the City Council and business. And one of the key ones was to ensure that there was a point person to facilitate that relationship. We understand that business is critical, not just to the nation, but to the stabilization and development of the city. So we look forward to working with you.
Wonderful. Any other questions? We're going to take 2 more questions and then ask the panelists to close. There's a question there from the gentleman. Just introduce yourself, say who you are.
Good morning, my name is Neil Ricks. I've been living in Bulawayo for 58 years, proudly Zimbabwean, and I'm involved in the conservation space as well as project management. The last 2 people that have spoken really resonated with me, because I do believe wholeheartedly within the Bulawayo context we've got the willingness to go forward. But I do think that there's a need, picking up on what the Mayor has said, for it to be coordinated. And I think at the moment within this room there's probably representatives from 6, 7, maybe even more organisations that are involved and have members and are looking towards developing Bulawayo and taking it further. So I would urge, and I think that it's a high priority, that that person that is within the City Council is identified, or that group of people is identified, and calls these meetings, call to action. And it can be broken down into different groups. We can have somebody looking at water, we can have somebody looking at business rights, and we can also look at how we're going to tell that story, working with specialist media houses perhaps to tell that story. So the starting point is to get people into the room, and for us to identify and solidify our agenda and what we want them to do. Second thing that I would like to add is, and this might be a bit contentious, but elsewhere in the world I've seen when there's a shortage of water, the council is very careful about the development permits it gives out. So you can't just go issuing development permits for, let's call them a low density townhouse complex, without being sure that that water is not going to, water offtake is not going to impact the citizens and the Bulawayos of that town that have been paying their taxes for many years. Just now, next year, let's say, we could be down to even less water than we've got now, because it's been, the demand has come from new buildings. I know that's contentious, because infrastructure development does mobilize and does capitalize the economy, but it's still a food for thought. And my last comment is about foreign investment. Yes, I understand the need for it, and I can see there's a time and a place for it, but I truly, wholeheartedly believe that those of us that live in Bulawayo, if we're given the same opportunities, the same incentives, the same tax breaks, the same access to resources, should have the first stab at turning this beautiful city around. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Very, very powerful points there. There's another hand, that's the last hand. Okay, I see 2 hands. We're not going to be in Bulawayo for a long time, so there's another hand around the hand there. Let me do it, and we give the panelists an opportunity to close. Yes,
Thank you so much for the conversation that we're having. My name is Personal Trust Mazibis. I'm a social entrepreneur, born and raised in Bulawayo, though we love traveling globally. But I always come back home. I have 3 comments. Comment number 1 is on eco-inclusive energy. We have problem in terms of energy in Zimbabwe, but there is a solution to it. Eco-anymore. We have 90,000 people going there every day. Imagine if we put in smart tiles and kinetic tiles there, we're going to harvest enough energy to light up the city while we're waiting for the government to address the national crisis. That's point number 1. Point number 2, we spoke of the unique value proposition of the city. Who are we as a people? What is the story that we're telling? And our story goes back into history, and that speaks into tourism and creative industry. We cannot go back into industries, but now we have a new form of industry, which is creative industry, where we tap into the demographics of young people. We have one of the biggest events. I think there are 3 in Bulawayo. We have the Manchester, we have Zekenin's Tire Burnout, we have the House of Summit. Putting all those together, make events similar to the Sydney Festival. That is making close to 240 million annually. Go to South Africa and Mpumalanga, there's the Impulse Festival, raking in 90 million revenue to the local city. So as we are looking for ways of making money, let's focus on the creative economy, where our young people are spending much money into that space, and that money will generate and move within the locality of Bulawayo. Then my last point again is the issue of our railways. Railways, I remember this is it yesterday when the SAT conversation on industrialization, they spoke of the connectivity between Mozambique and Zimbabwe. No matter how much they connect Mozambique to Zimbabwe, the connectivity from that far end to Zimbabwe will then slow things down. Now, the freight movement requires us to look beyond the railways because there is a movement of life. Imagine if there was a low-cost carrier that is carrying people from Bulawayo to South Africa, lower than the cost of the buses that are moving here. Go today outside here and count the buses that are moving from Bulawayo to South Africa. There are more than 12. Each full, it's 65 passengers, around $50. How much money is that? So we need to look beyond and start looking at the low-cost carriers. Imagine if there was a Boeing that is carrying almost 500 people from Bulawayo to South Africa. How much money are they going to make that? Then there's the other side of what you call the agro-tourism. You spoke of Cape Town. I went to the Spear Farm. Spear Farm, they are created, but they take us for tourism and we spend money. So there are issues around, spaces around Bulawayo where we can venture into, like the township economies. While we're telling our story and consuming the local food, or also harnessing, the council has 31 schools. Let's turn those schools into centers of innovation. That's speaking to local issues. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Myron Masebo from youth organization in Bulawayo called Youth Sunday, and I also represent Ward 5 Development Committee as a youth focal point. My contribution and question and suggestion is that the city council has a lot of property, but the residents are not informed about that property. I request that we do an inventory of the properties that are owned by the city council, and then those properties are declared to the public. We have heard about Asabu Farm. There are a lot of flats around the city, stadiums and whatsoever, but our people, the residents, the ratepayers, they don't know that this is owned by the council. So let us utilize all our properties by firstly declaring them as the city council property. That will then help also the residents to be whistleblowers if there is corruption there. And also secondly, I suggest that on the economy of the city, let us own the informal sector and make it formal in our council. And also the taxi drivers, the way we chase them, how about we introduce them as formal in the city? Let's own them, let us not chase them. Just like Kenya economy is owned by those small boys and whatsoever. So my suggestion is, those vendors there in Fifth, let us own them as a council. Those in Chovambayoas, let us own them as a council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then the last question before we close.
All right, thank you very much, Trevor.
Identify yourself.
My name is Councillor Alec Love, representing Ward 25 in Bulawayo. Thank you, Dave, for profiling the city. in the way that you did. I want to appreciate the members of management, our fellow councillors and members of the public who are also here. I want to say my biggest takeaway in this insightful conversation is that we need to look at what used to work for Bulawayo. Yes, if you go back in time, you find that Bulawayo, and maybe this was captured by the mayor, the issues of revenue collections. All cars in the city used to pay at revenue. But up until we came to have Zinara, we lost one of the biggest cash cows for city council. Then our roads started to break. We have broken roads. Maybe to use the appropriate term, I would say our roads have literally decayed. Potholes all over. So that revenue source used to help Bulawayo maintain its roads, be it tarring, be it retraveling. The second point, we used to generate power up until we had our ZPC, ZESAT, ZTTD, Zekumba, some structure. Bulawayo used to supply power locally for the industry, for the commerce, for the mining and the farmers. We never had power cuts. But up until they came with this parastatal, Bulawayo is now subjected to these crippling load sheddings. The third one is the water rights. We used to build our own dams, supply the water, get revenues, be it all licensing, regularization. Bulawayo, those were cash cows for Bulawayo. So I think the biggest problem that we have as Bulawayo economically is that we are hamstrung. That's a legislative problem. We are hamstrung. Bulawayo cannot, because when you talk about economic development, you are looking at the factors of production. And factors of production, you touch on power, you touch on water, where you used to have autonomy and control. But all those were taken away from us. So if probably anyone from government and those who are listening, we are appealing for autonomy. We are appealing for government to revisit these kind of repressive legislations, which are hamstringing or suppressing or hampering the economic development of Bulawayo. Thank you.
Wow, I couldn't have said it as clear as you have. Very, very clearly. Thank you so much. We're going to allow the members of the panel. We're so grateful that you could do this, and some of you at very short notice. If you could just give us your closing remarks. What are your reflections? First of all, what are your reflections after sitting through this? And secondly, what's your takeaway from this kind of conversation?
So thank you, Trevor. Just to go back to the local story, perhaps we do need to look back 80 odd years ago. Why did so many immigrants choose to come to Bulawayo? And why did they establish such successful businesses? Sadly, many of them have subsequently closed. But certainly the ease of doing business, the welcoming for capital back at that time, put Zimbabwe well ahead of most of the other countries and economies in the world. So we do need to go back to that. Perhaps the most exciting thing from this discussion is that it demonstrates the knowledge and the skill and the understanding is in Bulawayo to solve our problems. And we now look to council to give us the vision of where we will be taking Bulawayo in the future.
Fantastic. Your closing remarks, say what's been your, give me that one, your impressions and your biggest takeaway.
Thank you. My biggest takeaway was the willingness and eagerness showed by people inside this room to keep Bulawayo alive and move forward. I would just like to say the expansion by INSCO should spur us to go forward, because many people are now seeing that there is potential business in Bulawayo. So to our city fathers, well done, keep up the good work. I think together we can make good things. Thank you.
Eric, I want you to be the last one. Take this mic, your impressions and your biggest takeaways.
Thank you. The water issue is clearly targeted as one of the key issues. One of the components missing in that is the sanitation side, and we have experts here on that. The sewage and recycling. No city with water shortage can ignore recycling. It's something that's absolutely essential. You can blend up to 30% of recycled water into your treated water and produce perfect drinking water with no problem whatsoever. And to throw away the lowest hanging fruit of all our water sources is something we've got to just bring it back into the plan. But if I could just add, the city has had a master plan. Bulawayo was the first city to develop a master plan. Its town planners had a vision for Bulawayo, they knew what they were going on about, and they produced a master plan which I think needs to be constantly updated, but at the same time it needs to be publicized. Very few people know they can get a copy of Bulawayo's master plan, and perhaps the copies are not available because of printing. But having a strong plan is important. And lastly, I'd just like to use this expression from quality assurance. There's a concept in quality assurance which I think doesn't have to only apply to manufacturing, and that is a Japanese word called Kaizen, K-E-I-Z-A-N. Kaizen means continuous improvement. I think we're seeing or we're witnessing the start of an improvement, and if we can maintain a Kaizen, we can continuously improve Bulawayo.
Wonderful. Harry, if in your closing remarks, you were critical in the conversations to have this conversation. Has it worked for you? Your impressions? What's your biggest takeaway going forward? How can we keep the momentum going?
Thank you very much, Trevor. I think my key takeaway is two things. As Bulawayo, we need to know our story. It's very critical. What are those key selling points about our city that are differentiating us from the rest? Once we know our story, we've got to be able to not only tell it, but evangelize that story. You know, we're about 20 kilometers from Matobo. For those that like reading history, there's a historic figure that went there. He fell in love with Matobos, and if I can quote him, he said he was mesmerized by the grandeur and the loneliness, the majesty of Matobos. Talk about reimagining. What is it that we see going forward? There was a time when Victoria Falls failed to host a conference as a country. Why? Because we couldn't put up about 5,000 rooms, and we ended up losing that. Then one person said to me, but why is Bulawayo not configuring itself as a conferencing capital? There's decongestion there. You'd find that which you are lamenting, that Bulawayo is no activity. Potentially it's our strength, because there's no congestion. Within 10 minutes you come from the north to the south. So we need to have a bit of faith, that ability to see the impossible and that which is invincible. Thank you.
Wow. Well, Dave, your last remarks, Mr. Mayor. All of us here don't want you to be called, I think.
Trevor, first of all, I just want to thank you for remembering your hometown. As you know, publicity is oxygen, and this city has huge potential, but without friends like you promoting it, providing opportunities like this, we simply can't tell our story. And I think that you've seen today that there's something that marks out the city. There's incredible unity, there's incredible talent, there is vision, and those are critically important ingredients. So I have great confidence for the future of the city, and we look forward to working with you in future to promote it more. See you all.
Thank you. Siyabonga. And applause for all of us for making this possible. Mina ngazalwa lapha. Ngumfana walapha. This is my city. This is our city. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have the confidence, Harry, that you have in this city, that you have at Lobos. We realize the problems, we see the potholes, but I think if you look beyond the potholes and the problems, the future is beckoning. Mrs. Moyo, I love your passion and your input. I think your message to all of us is that it's people in this room and those that love this city that are going to make a change. We can't wait for Harare to come and solve our problems because they do not know our problems. So, Mrs. Vanda, again, that's exactly what you're saying. Let's get to know each other. Let's get to work together. The young, the old, the lawyers, the vendors, and everybody else is required in this. All of us do count. All of us do matter. We love the city. That's why we are here. We are going to be back again. And the invitation to us at Alpha Media Audience, at Heart and Soul Broadcasting Services, the Zimbabwe Independent News Day, is that we are there for you. We don't support any political party. We support Zimbabwe. We support Bulawayo. We support the goodness that is in all of us. We want us to succeed. So if you think we can be of any use to you, know that we're there for you. Thank you so much.